Hello, this is Mark Riccobono, President of the National Federation of the Blind, and you're listening to, hopefully, for the 100th time. Hopefully, you've been here for every episode, but we're really happy you're here listening to White Canes Connect.
Hey there, PA Federationists. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I'm joined today by co-host and White Canes Connect creator, Lisa Bryant. Lisa, how are you today?
I am great, David, and so excited to be celebrating our 100th episode of White Canes Connect.
And do you remember back when we were starting, you wanted to do one a month?
Well,
we
wait,
would be
no.
about 3 years away from doing 100 episodes.
But also, remember, it was just going to be an MP3 file that...
Oh, I remember that part, yes.
So, kudos to you for thinking much, much bigger, which is why we are here today, or where we are today.
And it's interesting, you say thinking bigger, but in the upcoming interview, that's exactly what President Riccobono said, to go and talk to folks. They have time for you. And I thought that was very interesting. And it just shows that what we did by reaching out to him, he made himself available. He was gracious with his time. And boy, did he give us a lot of information.
Yeah, he really was. I mean, this was your idea to invite him to help us celebrate. And I thought, I might have to go through some hoops. It might not happen in time, but it was a much easier process. And it was great that he was available. And we are just delighted to have our very own President Mark Riccobono helping us celebrate our 100th episode. And for some people, some of this is, you've heard these stories maybe a few times more than you care to even share, but there is a lot of information here that I even learned, and it will be especially helpful to some of the newer members of the Federation.
One thing that he said, and we can talk about this as we close it out on the other end, but I love the idea of sailing. So that is something that I've thought about. Other health issues may stop me from doing that, but I know that it won't be that I can't see if I don't do it.
So let's hear from our very own President Mark Riccobono.
President Riccobono, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
President Riccobono, thank you for being a part of celebrating our 100th episode. I just have to give you just a little bit of background on how this all came to be. It was David who even first noticed that we were coming up on the 100th episode. And he said, we should get President Riccobono on. And you made it so easy. Thank you so much again. And it makes perfect sense to do this to have you rather, because we, of course we are, the official podcast of the Pennsylvania affiliate, but not all of our topics and not all of our guests are Federation specific. However, in light of this commemoration, it does make sense to have you so that we are reminded, our listeners are reminded that we are part of something much larger. So what better way than to have our national leader to help us celebrate and just kind of confirm that. And so people know that these are the roots that we spring from. So without further ado, just wanted to have a very casual conversation about you, about the organization. We have, as you know, all the time have new members. So some of this may be new information for some. It may be a refresher for others. But first of all, we'd love to get to know Mark Riccobono before NFB. Just tell us briefly what life was like before you came to the organization.
Well, I appreciate the question. And let me say, I suspect that all of the folks on the show are actually related to the Federation, this being the organized blind movement. I I don't think there's anything that is not intersecting with blind people that's not relevant to our movement. So I'm appreciate the opportunity to be here. Um, you know, be, before I knew the National Federation of the Blind, I didn't really know I was a blind person. I grew up being legally blind starting at age 5. And it's not that I didn't know I couldn't see so well. I did know that. But I didn't know any blind role models. I didn't have blindness in my family. I really learned that it was important to see from society around me. And so I learned to fake it. I learned to fake it. That's the short story is that I learned to pass. I
Yeah.
became a passenger in my own life. And it wasn't until I came across a member of the National Federation of the Blind that I knew there was a completely different paradigm. And that completely different paradigm has sent me on a journey which is still continuing today. Still discovering, still haven't found the limits for blind people.
Before coming to the Federation, though, you were on one career path and realized, there's more that I want to do. Tell us a little bit about where you first started in your education and what you thought you were going to be professionally.
Well, it's an interesting question to even thought what was I going to be able to be. When I was growing up, and it came time, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and you could select what high school you wanted to go to.
Right.
And all of the high schools had a specialization, and I thought I was going to go to the School of Broadcasting. I'm a baseball fan. Sorry to the Philadelphia Philly fans out there. And I'm a Milwaukee Brewers guy, and I used to and still do listen to baseball's best announcer, Bob Uecker, on the radio. And so that I thought, I could go into broadcasting. I used to just to date myself. I used to play Nintendo, and I would play baseball on Nintendo and record it on a VHS, a VCR, and then I'd play it back, and I'd overdub myself calling the game. But so I thought broadcasting, but I went to a presentation from the high school that specialized in business, and they showed students running their own businesses. And I thought, man, that is cool. So I decided I'm going to go there. It happened that was the school that had a resource room for blind students. So that's a different story. But I went to the school specialized in business, and I got into the entrepreneurship track in my freshman year, never looked back. And so I knew that what you did if you wanted to get into business was you go to college. All I knew is that you were supposed to go to college. I had no idea what I was really going to be able to do. And I specialized in marketing and economics. I had a specialization in international business also. So marketing was really at the core of my interest. And so when it came time to seek a job, I applied for a lot of jobs, didn't get any particular hits in marketing, but did get some interviews and finally hired to work in retail management. Now, I wasn't really marketing by any stretch of the imagination, and I didn't really know that I wanted to be in retail management, but it was a job right out of college, number one. Number two, my interest was also in entrepreneurship. So it was a good starting point. And being a blind person, I felt like I'm happy to have a job out of college. So all that is the long way of saying I didn't know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, because I didn't know what was possible for me. I was still growing into my understanding of blindness from a federation worldview. I was still learning from folks. And so in that same time period, by this time I had become president of our Wisconsin affiliate, and I was still learning. And I got onto a statewide council that was looking at the education of blind children. And I would come to the meetings better prepared than anybody else. And the way that I did that is I would go to members of the federation and say, okay, so we're dealing with this. What would you suggest we do? How would you reform educational systems? I stole all the greatest ideas from the organized blind movement. And that got me noticed. And the state superintendent of public instruction asked me to serve as the first director of the Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired, which is the educational unit under the State Department of Public Instruction, oversees the School for the Blind and outreach services. So I was thrust into being an educational administrator with a $6.1 million budget, 100 employees.
And fresh out of college.
Well, a year out of college.
Okay.
Call it fresh, a year out of college.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even say I knew that was a career path at that point. What I did know is I knew everything not to do in the education of blind children, and I knew how to raise expectations. And I had an entrepreneurial mindset to it and a business mindset. So, which, in a lot of ways was helpful, because when you're talking about dealing with federal dollars, state dollars, managing expenses, getting creative with how we do things. I mean, my business background is very helpful.
Yeah.
What I had to do was learn the education side, the laws, those pieces. But, I have been doing advocacy work, and that was the exciting part. And so I was able to combine those things and really learn about education. And what I figured out was that education actually allowed me to put together a lot of different skills. And I had a passion for it. And I had a passion for combining unique resources and molding them into something. So it's kind of a weird formation of my marketing talent. My friend Anil Lewis would tell you that I should tell you I have a doctorate degree, because I was in the Disney internship program, and so you could come out with the Mousters, but I went all the way to the doctorate. So marketing's really at my heart and soul, and I'm doing that every day in so many ways.
Yeah. So did I miss how you even came to know about that Wisconsin chapter?
Because I had been faking it.
Yeah.
I hit rock bottom. My sophomore year in college, my relationships were breaking up because I didn't know myself. Now that's true of a lot of people in college, so not unique to me, but I had no idea what was possible for me. I couldn't fake it anymore. I couldn't see well enough to compete, and I wasn't blind enough to know I needed other resources. I didn't have any role models. I came close to flunking some of my classes, especially in computer science, where I had to see a screen. So I thought there has to be somebody living with blindness that knows what to do. And so I started reaching out, and fortunately I found a gentleman who lived in Madison, Wisconsin, totally blind guy, was doing rehab teaching. He saw my post on a listserv and said, I'll come talk to you. And it turned out that he was a member of the National Federation of the Blind. And he just talked to me about the things that he does and how did he do them. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how it was done as a blind person, but here was someone that was willing to mentor me. And like I say, he was a member of the Federation. He encouraged me to apply for scholarships. Now, I had been applying for scholarships from the NFB. I had been telling blind people what a wonderful asset I would be if they gave me a scholarship, but they never did, rightfully so, I'm sure. But what I'd like to say is that in 1996, our Wisconsin affiliate had no other applicants, and so they gave me a scholarship. But they said, congratulations, but part of the scholarship, this is a state scholarship, is you have to come to our national convention in Anaheim, California. I had never traveled across the country by myself. I had a fold-up white cane that had been sitting in my closet. I got it out and I went to Anaheim, California, and I showed up at the Anaheim Hilton. And that's where my life changed.
Yeah.
I met blind people. I had to rely on blind people for everything. I found I couldn't read the agenda, couldn't read it in print, didn't know Braille. So I found the fastest Braille reader I could. So I found Brooke Sexton. They said Brooke read 400 words a minute. I thought, that's pretty good for me. So Brooke was my first reader. I had to follow blind people around. And I guess, I just, because the atmosphere was so welcoming, and I'm not one to just sit around, when I saw a place that I could jump in and help, I did. And people welcomed it. And so I didn't know what value I had to offer, but I found a community where people appreciated that me for who I was. They said, look, we can teach you some of these things you don't know, but we also need you to give back. And they didn't say it explicitly, but I noticed that's what people were doing. And so I just jumped in and started helping.
Yeah. It's interesting how finding that person who wants to kind of pour into you, and then finding that tribe, how that can be so life-changing. Mark, you have been our president since 2014. I got it right. So that's a 2-year. It's a 2-year term, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. What's that feel like to have that endorsement year after year, or every 2 years?
Well, it's nerve-wracking. I don't take it for granted. I don't assume that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I take it seriously, being accountable to the members. And so I'm always listening to people. And the advantage I have is I know that nobody's harder on me than me. So it's nerve-wracking in that I take very seriously being accountable to blind people. And because of what this community has done for me, continues to do for me in terms of shaping my life, raising my expectations.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is to be the person that lets this community down. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is, it's a tremendous honor to represent everyday blind people and to carry forward their hopes and dreams to all the places it needs to happen. And it's humbling, but also exciting. I wrote a letter early in my presidency to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and he agreed to meet. Now he didn't know who I was, but he knew the name National Federation of the Blind, and he knew it meant something. And that's pretty cool when you realize that the federation, the movement that blind people have built, carries weight, and how you use that weight is really important. So, you say, well, there's no term limits, and there's not, but I'm expected every year to give a presidential report, and other people may not think of it, but that's my job evaluation. I have to stand up there for an hour and tell the members of the organization what we've been doing, and they get to decide whether it's enough. And trusting the people is one of the most heartwarming parts of our organization.
So when you took over in 2014, I know Dr. Maurer is still pretty active. How is that transition? And do you lean on him a lot for things? How does that all go down with him still being somewhat active?
Mark Maurer is my mentor and friend. And I've always relied on his counsel and expertise. He was from moment number one very clear that I had his support 100% of the time, as long as I was good for the organization, and I could call on him when I needed things, but the job was mine, not his. That's a difficult thing for a guy like Mark Maurer, who's served in the presidency longer than anybody ever has in the National Federation of the Blind. But he was very clear it wasn't his job anymore. It was my job. So I could call on him as much or as less as I wanted to. And he's a strong personality. Fortunately, Mark Maurer and others encouraged me to be Mark Riccobono, not to try to be Mark Maurer or Jacobus Tenbrook or somebody else. And that has always been my guidepost. And I will say that Mark Maurer did as much as I think anybody could do to make the transition easy, in that he was there to answer the questions, but he worked hard not to be in the way. And again, I think that's a very difficult thing from his perspective when you've been doing it so long, right? So, but the reality is you have to grow into a position like this. And part of growing into it is figuring out the stuff you didn't know, that you didn't even know to know. And fortunately, because I have been around the Federation and the Federation has given me opportunities, I've been in circumstances of having to take on things I didn't know. The last thing I would say is it's interesting what happens in any kind of transition. People, there were people that wanted to put daylight between Mark Maurer and I. I would get emails. I could show them to you. Don't do what your predecessor did, or,
Wow.
You should not do. And, the fact of the matter is, I'm not Mark Maurer.
Yeah.
But you know what? Mark Riccobono would not be who he is without Mark Maurer. I would be I would be different. I mean, he has had a tremendous positive impact on my life in terms of how I think about the world, in terms of the heart that I put into the organization. He's made it possible. So, to say don't be like Mark Maurer, that's impossible. I can't separate myself from Mark Maurer or Betsy Zaborowski, who was my first boss when I was, direct report here on staff at the Federation. I mean, so many other people I could mention in the movement. So there's always an interesting dynamic in those transitions. It's a little bit of a dance, right? Nobody's trying to step on someone else's feet. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. And so today, Mark Maurer is still a significant force in our organization, but it's going on 10 years. He's doesn't come to our building day to day anymore. you may say he's retired, but he's, it's hard to
Sort of
call
actively retired.
call a leader like that retired, but
Yeah.
he's not here every day.
Yeah.
So I probably don't talk to him as much as I'd like to, or as much as he'd like to be in the loop because it's busy. But I know that if he calls me, I'm going to take his call because he's got something meaningful, and vice versa.
Mhm.
And we're truly blessed. We just had a leadership seminar here, and we were able to have Mark Maurer here. I mean, it's a true blessing to have someone that's poured that much energy into this movement, and truly has impacted more people than anybody alive today. That's a huge asset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he tolerates me.
I wanted to make sure people really got a sense of how the NFB is structured. Give a sense of, just where the chapters are. Well, no, let's start from the top. Like, we're structured nationally. Maybe you could explain some of the very important departments nationally, like the legal team, which has personally been very helpful to me as I write some stories sometimes and need their assistance, and they've been wonderful. But give a bird's eye view of how we're structured nationally and where all our affiliates live, and our chapters and divisions, just sort of some statistics on those things.
The National Federation of the Blind was founded in 1940, right there in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, at the meeting of the Pennsylvania Association of the Blind.
Mm-hmm.
And the founding of the federation was bringing together 7 states at that time, and is the first time that there was a nationwide organization of blind people. So the national organization, of course, now includes 52 state affiliates, including all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. The national organization is the overarching organization that makes up and connects all of those 52 affiliates. The national organization also includes specialized divisions.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we have a division of blind students, parents of blind children, blind lawyers, blind government employees, so on and so on. And the national organization then, there are many pieces to how we coordinate the work. The national organization is here to coordinate the activities of the nationwide movement, recognizing that blind people in California have and face similar barriers and low expectations to the blind people in Pennsylvania. So each of our state affiliates are their own 501c3 organization. So they, our affiliates have autonomy to build local programs, but they affiliate with the national organization. And that's a very important commitment. First of all, it says that the affiliate supports a national movement. And that's really important, continues to be important, because there's a lot at the federal level that impacts us, and we can get a lot of scale by working together. But secondly, by agreeing to work together and by getting the opportunity to use the name National Federation of the Blind, that benefits our affiliates. But then the affiliate also agrees to be bound by any national policies.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a give and take, because the affiliates, they really run the national organization. The affiliates come together at our annual meeting. That's our national convention. And the national convention makes all of the policies. It elects the board of directors. All 17 of us are elected for 2-year terms. So all of the officers and 6 of our board members will be up for election this year. And by virtue of the affiliates electing the board, they steer where the national policies go. So it's kind of a grand circle, right? So as the board, we're responsible for managing the organization at a national level between conventions, but that has to be at the will of the majority of the people at the convention. So our national board doesn't simply sit around and create policies for the affiliates because we're all affiliate leaders. We're all active in affiliates. And so we have to be thoughtful about, well, what is the impact on the affiliate? So it's a delicate ecosystem, but the beauty of it is it's all directed by blind people, blind people electing their own chosen leaders, who's going to represent us, and setting our own priorities. And unfortunately, we have limited time, resources, and money, so we have to set priorities. Why, why do X instead of Y? These are all choices we have to make, all toward pushing us forward. But because we have this very interconnected system, and our affiliates include local chapters, and those local chapters, focus more on the local issues that blind people are facing. But the beauty of bringing in that state and national connection is we can bring the expertise, resources. So, a chapter in Pennsylvania doesn't have to reinvent the wheel about what to do about electronic scooters that are laying all over the sidewalks, because the Seattle chapter or the Baltimore chapter or the Houston chapter has already dealt with it. And so we get that scale and that connectivity. So it's a very powerful system. It's also one that's made up of people, so it's quite interesting and diverse. And it's all based on what blind people want us to do.
So the bulk of everyone in leadership is blind, but how many people at the National Center do you have on staff that are sighted? Do you know what the mix is?
I don't track the statistics that closely. And just so to be clear, the staff of the Federation all report to the national president, and the staff, the job of the staff is to help carry out the programs at the national level. We have about 61 staff or so right now. I'd say probably a third of the staff are blind people.
Okay.
We're always looking for more talented people. We always want more blind people, but we always are looking, to hire who's the best qualified too. So blind people don't get an easy pass in the door. But the staff do a lot of work. When we have the best staff anywhere in the country, hands down. But what I don't want to get lost is that the work of the movement happens from hundreds and hundreds of volunteers making the organization run. We could never afford, to pay for the volunteer work that our members do all across the country, because the fact that people are personally invested in the movement and they're putting their time in means their heart's in it, right? They're not in it for money. And that's where the staff get very motivated and stay grounded in the work, because they recognize they have an important position because they are being employed by the movement. But they're also helping to amplify the work of hundreds of volunteers. So what's really powerful is, you'll see our staff active in chapter meetings too, and they're not being paid to be there because they understand they're working for a mission, a cause that's big. So we have a small staff, especially compared to some agencies for the blind, but we get 3 times as much done.
Some blind folks, not in the Federation, sometimes criticize the NFB as being militant, or their people being militants. And I think it was Jonathan Mosen at the convention talked about this a little bit, but what do you say to those folks who say things like that?
Well, I would start with define militant. um, the fact of the matter is, we're not afraid to speak and act for ourselves, and there is a time and a place to be militant. Uh, at least in the sense of holding your territory and fighting for what's right. Now we don't have to fight as much as we used to because of the work of people who, pushed very hard against the system to change it, and that system pushed them back. The fact of the matter is we need to do that sometimes, but that's not the everyday experience of the movement today because of those people who fought to assert our right to live in the world. It's only a little more than 50 years ago that we had to start passing white cane laws. And the white cane laws in states basically asserted the right that blind people to be on the streets traveling by themselves. And, you talk to a blind person today, it's a very foreign idea. What do you mean you couldn't be out on the streets traveling alone? That was only 60 years ago. That's not that long ago when you think about it. And, we still struggle today, right, with people wanting to help us across the street when we don't want to cross the street. Any blind person who's been standing at a corner trying to send a text message on their iPhone has certainly been approached by someone figuring that they're standing at the corner because they're waiting for someone to help them. So sometimes we need to be militant. And we have that reputation because we have fervently stood up for our rights. That's not the day-to-day experience of the movement today because we've come to a different place. But there are times, about this time a year ago, my friend Gary Wonder and I were out at a Federation business dinner along with Danielle McCann, who works here, and she uses a guide dog, and we called an Uber, and the Uber showed up, and guy rolled down his window and said, "I'm not taking you."
Because of the dog.
Yeah, because of the dog. And okay, it would be easy to do nothing, but that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So I pulled out my iPhone and I had a conversation with the guy, not militant. I just had a conversation. I can send you the video. I said, you do realize you're violating Uber's policy. He didn't care. Now, at the same time, Gary Wonder was annoyed by this, so he went to stand in front of the car. Now, that's a militant
That's
thing
militant.
to do.
I was just thinking that.
And some people would call it stupid. I thought it was a tremendous gesture of love and support for Danielle, who was the one we were saying, "Hey, wait a minute, you don't have the right to do this." Now, how do you get change? Well, you need people that are going to stand in front of cars. I'm not saying everybody should do that every time, but that's what moved Gary in that moment. And I did my part, he did his part. I mean, that driver's not driving for Uber anymore. But why was that necessary? Well, frankly, Uber and Lyft, I don't want to give anybody a pass, has made it so hard for blind people to prove discrimination that you got to stand in front of the car so that your buddy can take a video of how obstinate the driver is being. And in fact, we have the video. We were able to give Uber the video of the driver then using his car to try to push Gary out of the way, which is using his car as a weapon.
Oh,
but
my goodness.
I guarantee you, if all we did was click a button and tell Uber we were discriminated against, nothing, right? Nothing would happen. So militant has a negative connotation. I can tell you, if you talk to Danielle, she thinks it has a pretty positive connotation, because she knows that somebody has her back. And if you need to call me militant for having somebody's back, go for it. I'm good with that. But that's not the day-to-day experience of the movement. That we don't have to do that. But when we do have to do it, we should be prepared to. So yeah, and there are people that they're just not comfortable with that, right? They're always going to stand down.
And I think it is those folks that are outside of the Federation that say that. They're the ones that say that because they don't know, as you're saying here, all of the good things that come day to day without standing in front of the car or doing any of that. And I think that's where it comes. And I think they use that term to make their point a little more dramatic and try to make it seem like we're a bad organization.
Well, and the claim is, militant is meant to be unreasonable. That's what the claim that they're trying to make. And unfortunately, the claim gets made by people that really don't know what the National Federation of the Blind is and what we do. A lot of them, someone has told them who we are. It's interesting. So we talked about my education experience. I came to work for the Federation and was doing education programs and putting together programs in science, technology, engineering, and math was one of my specialties. And I combed the country for who are the best people, inspiring blind people in science and engineering. And one person that was recommended was a guy named Ben Wentworth. He was a teacher, sighted teacher at the Colorado School for the Blind. So we invited Ben to a meeting with a bunch of other folks, and he said he would come because we were talking about how to, raise expectations in this area. And after about half a day of sitting in a meeting, he stood up and said, "I don't understand this at all. I'm listening to you all talk about how we do really powerful things for blind students. That's not what I was told you guys were about at all." So the folks at the Colorado School for the Blind at the time, whoever the people were that were teaching people about the field of blindness, made it very clear, stay away from those folks because they're bad news. And Ben kind of felt gypped because, what he found was a bunch of folks that thought like he did about how blind people should be competing in these subjects.
Yeah.
But he was kept from us because someone else told him who we were and what we do. So, what I say to people who call us militant is, well, come check us out and see if that's really what you find.
You mentioned earlier the leadership program, and I know that's a fairly new initiative. What are some other, first of all, tell us about that. What was the thinking in starting a more structured sort of training people up to be leaders within the Federation?
Well, first of all, we're working on leadership all the time. In one sense, we have a specific new program, but we never have had enough leaders. We don't have enough leaders now, but we have poured more into leadership than any other organization. When you talk to other disability-run organizations, the ones that are honest will tell you that they envy the Federation because we're always working on leadership. So 50 years ago, our president at the time, Kenneth Jernigan, started a leadership seminar program that's specifically run by the president of the organization. We often have 2 seminars a year. That's a deep dive with our national president. It's a unique experience. That's one thing we do. So coming up on the 50th anniversary, I went to our national board and said, well, it's coming up on the 50th anniversary, and we have a Kenneth Jernigan fund in our organization, and during the first 20 years of the Kenneth Jernigan Fund, it's had one main program, which is to help first timers come to our national convention, and it still does that. But there's nothing in the fund that limits it to that. That's just the only program that the national board has initiated. So I suggested, and the board thought it was a great idea, and has helped now shape it, creating a leadership program where we can work with a cohort of emerging leaders over an entire year. So to deepen the experience and expand the experience. And so we're piloting that this year. We have 15 individuals. We in the program, one of them was already president of one of our affiliates. We now actually have 3 people in the program who are affiliate presidents. 2 of them have become affiliate presidents during the course of the program. That wasn't really planned. But it's just an intensive, kind of year-long way to consistently work with folks. We're learning from it. And we're trying to also to develop new ways, new methods of building leaders in the organization, which is something we're always working on. And it happens in a dozen different ways. So this is just another program to add to that. And we're trying to figure out the formula to continue to do it right. So we told the first group in our Kenneth Jernigan Leadership and Service program that they're the pilots. They have to help us shape it and make it better for the next group. So we will have another cohort. Applications will open later in the spring for the next cohort, and we'll be looking for more leaders, folks that are already invested in the organization but want to grow their footprint. And one of the things we hope, by the way, is by growing leadership in the organized blind movement, we're also preparing blind people to take roles in other key places where we need blind people who understand the movement. So leading agencies for the blind, working in the government in appointed positions. What we like to say is, no matter what hat I'm wearing, it's always on my federation head. So, we have someone who's been a member of the federation, who's been in some of our leadership programs. He's now the executive director of the United States Access Board. And this means that his work there takes a different effectiveness because he truly understands the voice and experience of a diverse range of blind people.
I was speaking to Stacy Leap today, who is sometimes a contributor to this podcast, and she told me to make sure I said hello to you from her. So I know she has gotten a lot out of it, and hopefully you're getting her ready for us here in Pennsylvania.
There you go. Well, shaping the community. That's what we work on.
Tell us about some of the more impactful events that have happened within the Federation that have shaped it to what it is today. What would you say are some of those moments?
Well, our founding was one.
It can't happen without that, right?
Well, you can't overlook it. The problem is there's been hundreds and at this point thousands of moments. They all build on each other.
It's a good problem.
We have a key moment every year, which is our national convention, and you can't minimize that. The fact that we bring blind people together for the largest gathering, and it's really the largest gathering of people with disabilities on an annual basis anywhere in the world, where we, work together to set the priorities, make the decisions, drive the agenda of the movement, is key. And so the fact that we've had a convention every year, even during the pandemic, we were very clear that we still had to do business, not just hold a meeting, but do business, do what we do. We've only missed 2 years, and that was during World War II. And of course, the times were different. Transportation was different. the country was making a lot of sacrifices, but we've never missed a annual meeting otherwise. Those really are the cornerstone events, but then there's a lot of other ones, some big, some small. Our organization has protested in many places. One specifically is that when the agencies for the blind decided that they were going to set up an accreditation system to validate what agencies for the blind were doing, and that accreditation system would not include the organized blind movement, although we started with trying to influence it from the inside. When we were shut out, we decided to protest. And so anywhere that the National Accreditation Council board would go, blind people from all around the country would show up. Anytime there was a meeting inside the hotel, there'd be a protest outside the hotel. And that very active and out front actions in dozens of communities helped to shut down the idea that blind people couldn't be and shouldn't be at the head of the table when it comes to what happens for blind people. But there's dozens of other things and important moments. But I think the powerful thing about the movement is that a lot of the moments are small moments. Like my first convention experience, and even getting blind people together to try new things. When I first came to be a staff member at the Federation, my first assignment was to put together a science program. I just went around talking to blind people. What didn't you get to do in science? Every single person said dissection. We never get to do dissection. So we went and found a professor of biology and said, what kind of dissection would you do if you were teaching blind people? And she said, well, a good starting point is to dissect a dogfish shark. Now, I'm a marketing guy, so all I heard was shark. I thought that's going to make a great picture. Well, how do you dissect a dogfish shark? Well, I found out where to get dogfish sharks. We got some blind people together, and we got together in the kitchen here at our national office, and we learned how to dissect dogfish sharks. And we that's in one sense, a small moment, but that was the foundation of science programs that have raised expectations across the country. I know our Colorado Center has done dogfish shark dissections, and some of our affiliates. So the small moments are the really cool ones. Some of the ones I've been involved with, though, during my 20 plus years, we opened our headquarters building here in Baltimore, our newer building, 20 years ago, and we said we were going to build a car that a blind person could drive. Virtually nobody believed we would actually do it, except for Mark Maurer. It was his idea. In 2011, we had the first public demonstration of a blind drivable vehicle on the Daytona International Speedway. You don't get to drive on Daytona every day. Big moment in history. In 2007, we got the United States Congress to agree to mint a U.S. coin that had real readable Braille on it. Now, first of all, that had never been done before. The Helen Keller quarter, the Alabama quarter, which had Helen Keller on it, did have Braille on it, but it wasn't real Braille. It was for show. And the United States Congress only authorizes 2 commemorative coins a year. So we were shooting for 2009, and we knew that one of the coins was already taken because 2009 was the 200th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. So that was a slam dunk. That was already done. So the fact that we were able to get the Congress in less than 6 months to consider and then adopt a bill to have a coin with real readable Braille on it was tremendous. And that coin poured millions of dollars into our work on Braille literacy. And you say, how did that happen? Well, that's how a commemorative coin works. And so now we have Braille enrichment for literacy and learning programs all over the country. We also got the Louis Braille coin flown on the space shuttle, STS-125. Not many times anything related to blind people has been flown on the space shuttle. And so there's lots of little moments like that that are also big moments. So I don't know, I could talk all day about this, but I think it's the little moments that are significant and lead to those bigger moments.
And you had your own first years ago. I read that you were the first blind certified to independently sail.
Yeah, well, so when I was at the University of Wisconsin, especially once I got to know the Federation and recognized that, I didn't have to let blindness hold me back.
Yeah.
I stayed when I stayed in Madison during the summers. There was an active sailing program, and I got interested in it. And there was an accessible sailing program, so they had teaching methods for teaching blind people how to sail on the lake. And the sailing program had these little 2-person dinghy sailboats. They called them Badger Techs. They were built specially for the university. And you had, if you wanted to take one out and sail it yourself, you had to get certified. And so you had to meet certain benchmarks. You had to show that you could sail. You had to show that you could capsize and then right the boat again. I mean, you don't want to capsize, but you had to show that you could right the boat again if it did. And you had to be able to get back to the dock and that sort of thing. So to my knowledge and to the knowledge of folks at the sailing program, because they weren't aware of anybody, I was the first blind person to get certified to sail one of the Badger Techs independently. Sailing it is no problem. Of course, avoiding things is tricky if you don't have any way of knowing what's out there. And sailing, it's not as much of a problem. It's getting back to the shore in the right place. So over, the years since then, I've played with various technologies, especially here at the Baltimore Downtown Sailing Center. We've sometimes played with, what technologies can we help blind people utilize so they can manage sailing independently. It's a cool thing to do.
How did you capsize the boat?
It's pretty easy to capsize.
Is it that small that you could just kind of?
Yeah. I mean, you basically let out your sails and then tip it over, and you have to tip it over all the way so the sail is underneath the water, and then you have to show that you can right it again and get in and be safe. I mean, normally you wouldn't want to capsize it, but but yeah, it's an interesting experience. And I was a thinner guy then, so flipping it back over was a lot harder,
Yeah. Mark, you mentioned the importance of our national convention, which this year is in Orlando. I believe the 3rd through the 8th of July. Have you started your speech?
No, is the answer to that. But, I'm always thinking about things. So, things are whirring away, but I won't start really in earnest in that for another month or so. Right now, I got to start thinking about the agenda.
Mm-hmm. Let's not put the cart before the horse, right? We asked some people to submit questions, and Preston Gaylor is the membership coordinator and also secretary of our Jigsaw chapter. And he wanted to know if you could talk about one of your favorite memories so far as president.
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of them. Well, I'll start with one. In about the first month of being president, we had our Maryland Braille enrichment program was having its program here in our building, and the students did a little scavenger hunt sort of thing. And I was here in the office of the president, and the kids came by, and one of the kids said, "So you're the president?" I said, "Yeah, I'm president." They said, "Well, if you're the president, how come your picture's not on the wall with the other presidents?" um, which, keeps you humble, right? The kids keep you humble. Now, my picture is there now, but I thought it was kind of a cool way to stay humble. I guess I have to say I've had the opportunity to be in many places and represent the Federation and meet a lot of people in local communities. I strive to talk to more blind people in a year than anybody else. So I know blind people all over the place. And anytime I talk to a person, they're always impressed when they say they're from a state like Vermont. And I say, "Well, do you know so-and-so? And how do you know so-and-so?" So I try to know a lot of people. But in 2018, we worked with the Baltimore Orioles, and the Orioles wanted to be the first team to ever have Braille jerseys. And they said, "Okay, well, we'd like you to throw out the first pitch." Pretty cool. I'm a baseball fan, so pretty cool, but very nerve-wracking because, if the president of the United States goes out and throws out the first pitch, nobody expects the president of the United States to throw a good first pitch. But when a blind person goes out, of course, nobody expects a blind person to throw a good first pitch, but for a completely different reason, right? It's not the fact that I'm not a baseball star, it's because I can't see. So you're thinking, well, I'm kind of representing all blind people. So I threw about 100 pitches to get the mechanics down, and I had this great plan. At 2018, the Orioles were not like they are today, so there was only about 10,000 people in the stands, and a bunch of them were our members. But they said, "Well, do you need us to do anything special?" I said, "Well, said to the catcher, if you could just hit the glove so I have some audible way of knowing where it is, that'd be great." Well, of course, in the crowd, I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
So I did say to the person who walked me out to the mound, because they're very protective. They want to make sure you don't step on the mound itself because they like their dirt, I guess, to be protected. So I just said, "Could you give me an idea of which way to throw?" So that was a pretty cool experience. Very memorable, very unique. Once in a lifetime experience, except that last summer, my friend Norma Crosby called and said, "Now we've worked out for you to throw out the first pitch at the Astros game." And I said, "Well, Norma, we're in Texas. You should throw it out." But she wouldn't do it. So I've now done it twice, which I don't, there may not be any other blind people who have thrown out the first pitch at two Major League Baseball games.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an interesting experience and way to represent blind people. But again, there's lots of cool memories. Most of them are just getting to know people and the amazing stories, things that people have overcome, discrimination that people have faced, sometimes painful stories.
Yeah.
But what a blessing. A lot of people, they only know people in their local community. I've gotten to know the stories of people and communities all over this country. And so that's why it's really hard to pick a moment, because it's really that diverse experience with people. That's the blessing that I enjoy the most.
Talking about baseball, I went to an Astros game, not the one that you threw out the first pitch. I went on 4th of July, and we had a device. In Houston, they have a device. It's called Listen, so you can hear the real-time audio while you're watching. So when everybody's cheering, you know what they're cheering about. And it's frustrating to me, and a friend of mine did a tour of about 10 cities, and to various degrees of success with getting a device. Either the team didn't offer them, or he couldn't find the place to get them, or he was able to use them. And what can be done? I've been calling and emailing the Phillies for the last 2 or 3 years to try and get a device. And no one seems to be able to know who's the best person, do you think, if you're asking to go to a team, whether it's Major League Baseball, NFL, wherever, who do you think the best one to go to try and get that answer is?
Well, I'd start as high as you can get, but start with whoever you can get the attention of, and then working with other blind people to bring that to scale. First of all, who do we know? Who do we know that works for the club? And get creative. Maybe it's starting with the radio announcers, the primary station that provides the announcing. Say, hey, we love your work, except that we can't get it when we're in the ballpark. Can you help elevate this, or can you get us to someone at the club that we can talk to? Also, the Federation, our national convention, passed a resolution on this topic. I've written a letter with that resolution to all the major sports leagues. So you can share that resolution. We haven't gotten a great response, but the local advocacy is really important. I know that's some of our local chapters and state affiliates have had luck with leveraging that to go to these franchises and say, hey, we need you to do something. Of course, you can always, start by seeing what information they have on their website about disability access. Usually they have an email address or a phone number that you can start with in advance, just getting to know the people. What we have found is in some places, whoever is the point person for disability access issues is hungry and looking for, what else can we do? And I think especially the off season is a good time to do it. I mean, obviously, if they haven't done anything, you're showing up at a Phillies game. If they don't have anything, they don't have anything, right?
Right.
So
right.
At that point, it's probably, especially for people who care, it's a source of embarrassment. So I think taking those situations to say, okay, so, who can I follow up with tomorrow so we can get this done for next time?
Right.
And then getting the local chapter involved, letting people know you've taken these steps, and just keeping the pressure on. My experience is that you can find somebody who they want to help be your champion, and then it's just getting the follow through and getting people bought into it. Usually people aren't actively trying to exclude blind people, but you might have to get militant. Who knows?
I'm not going to stand out in front of a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but I do want to get it done. It was just so different, the experience of watching a game when you could tell what's going on, as opposed to using an app or using even a transistor radio where there's even that delay, and everybody's sitting down when you finally found out, oh, there was a ball hit to the gap and this happened and that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much that we could talk about still. We didn't even get a chance to get into the centers and the talk about our key event in Washington every year. David, I know, wanted to talk about the BEP program, but folks should definitely kind of play around with the website, nfb.org. There's chock full of information there. But since we didn't get into all of the different things, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe put a call to action out there, or what kind of encouragement would you have for whether someone's new to the Federation and been in there for a while? How can people sort of deepen? What's the best way to sort of deepen your engagement with the Federation?
Well, of course, the first thing is becoming a member and recognizing that that's an important commitment that you're making, not just to be a recipient, of something, but we have an active membership standard. We want people to be involved in making the organization work. The second thing is, it's not just enough to be a member. You have to get into the information stream about what blind people are talking about. So reading our publications, reading the Braille Monitor, reading the history of the organized blind movement, to understand how it is that we got to this point as a motivator for where we need to go. I think you have to learn about where we've been and why we're doing what we're doing as part of figuring out where you fit in. And then, finding a place to apply your skills and talent. And a lot of people say, well, I've told the leaders I'm here whenever they need me. Well, fact of the matter is, people may not know what your skill set is or what you're really interested in. And my experience has always been, if you see a need in the Federation, pop your head up and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Is that cool? And 9.5 times out of 10, they're going to say, where you been all my life? Now, there may be that time when they say, oh, no. We have so-and-so is going to do that. But what you could do is this. And it, again, has to be strategic. We can't do everything that every single member wants us to do. We all agree by being here that we're part of a community. And it's not, I don't always get my way. You don't always get your way. We've agreed to work together. So reading the history, understanding it, studying, and then putting your own ideas in the mix, recognizing that sometimes they're going to be good ideas, sometimes they're not. There's dozens of opportunities to get more involved. And I think you just need to step out on faith that you're going to add value to the organization. What I find is some people are intimidated, and I know I was like, man, there's some amazing people here. How can I make a difference? Now, fortunately, because I was hanging around with students, they needed my help. So I learned early on, but I do see this from a number of people who are like, there's some incredible people. I can't be like these people. Well, I guess I'm here to tell you, the only way any of us got to where we are is because we learn from other people, and we have made mistakes. We've missteps along the way, but because we have this loving, supported community, and because if you're in it for the group and not just for your own ego, the group's going to forgive you, right? And it's a great place to learn leadership skills, and you're going to make mistakes in that. When I was a young affiliate president, my Braille reading was horrible. I was just to learn Braille. And I don't know how people tolerated any presentation I gave, but they did. They did because they got to know me and they allowed me that space to develop my skills. I'm sure it was painful to listen to. So just know that this is a loving, supportive environment. It will push you to be better. It pushes me to be better every day, but that's what you need in order to continue to raise expectations. Get involved locally. And once you do that, there's lots of opportunities at the national level as well. But we want people to be involved locally, because if you're not involved locally, it's hard to understand the real nature of the organization. And the last thing I would say is, when in doubt, talk to people. There's hundreds of mentors out there. People all over the country will take your call because you're a member of the Federation. And so if you're not clicking with folks in your local chapter for whatever reason, find someone else. Now, I can't spend all day, every day, spending hours talking to members, but I talk to members all the time. I'm happy to help try to get you connected, but I'm sure our great podcast hosts here would help you get connected. Our division presidents, our website is full of it, information. Yeah, that's what I would say. Connect with people, because it's the people that make the movement what it is. All the other stuff, the history, it's great, helpful, but you gotta connect with people, and connect with people who are in the leadership and who can help you. When I got elected in 2014, the day before I was elected, I gave a speech. And it was a speech based on a letter I wrote to Kenneth Jernigan. And it was my way of coming to peace with the fact that I came into the organization in 1996. He died in 1998. I had more than one opportunity to talk to the guy. I never took it. I never took it because I figured, who am I? This guy, he's got more important people to talk to. I made that decision for him. That wasn't his thinking. That was mine.
Right.
And I wrote this letter to come to peace with it myself, because I have some regret that I didn't get that opportunity. But it was also to tell people, any leader that's worth anything in this organization is not too important to talk to you. Talk to the leadership. We have a presidential suite at the National Convention, and people are surprised that they say, well, who can come? Anybody can come. If it's open, you can come. Now, when the door is closed, please go away, because it was probably sleeping. But when the door is open, come on in. Now, I can't guarantee you that we're going to be able to sit down and have an extensive chat, because there's 100 people. But come by, spend time. If you want to meet the president, go for it. And by the way, at the same time, you'll get to meet some other people. Don't decide for someone else that they don't have time for you. I want people to know I have time for them, and I want other leaders to get that opportunity too. That's unique in our organization. I think there are a lot of organizations where the leadership is protected. You have to do some special gestures and handshakes to get to the top people. That's not who we are.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be involved, just know you can talk to the leaders that are elected to represent you, and get to know them personally. And I know that they will want to get to know you.
Well, we really do appreciate your time, and it would be a tragedy if we didn't ask probably the most important question of this podcast: the customary endings. How did they get started, and who picks the jokes? Who does all that?
Well, the customary ending started on presidential release number 1, with Dr. Jernigan adding a little piece of humor to the end, and they have continued since then, and I've continued it. I think it's a fun tradition. Who picks the jokes? Well, it's a variety of, some people submit them. I have urged affiliates to send in recordings, especially of kids, but doesn't have to be of kids, giving customary endings to me. I don't get a lot of offerings, so I usually cajole my own kids into it. Sometimes they pick the jokes, sometimes I make suggestions. They're all teenagers now, so they mostly reject my suggestions. And it's getting harder to get jokes out of them, because they're kind of bored with that. But people send jokes to me once in a while. I try to encourage kids in our Bell Academies to submit jokes, and I hope that I like when people record kids giving jokes. It's a fun tradition, and so I've kept it up. And I've written an article a number of years ago now about the presidential release, and that included some of the customary endings. So you can look in the Braille Monitor for the article about the presidential release. I think it was 2019. It gives some of the history and even would tell you what the first customary ending was.
Oh, wow.
I will link to that in the show notes.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, in true Federation fashion, we would love to end with some customary endings. So I have one in honor of spring, and then David has one on in honor of baseball. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What did the dirt say to the rain?
What?
If you keep this up, my name will be Mud.
There you go. Nice.
Before I get to my customary ending, the Orioles are playing the Brewers. You pick?
Well, I have
It's tough, right?
I'm Milwaukee through and through, but Milwaukee basically gave away its best pitcher to the Orioles and got nothing for it. So I guess I'm going to go Orioles.
Okay. All right. And then on that note, did you hear the joke about the pop fly?
No.
It's over your head.
There you go. Very nice.
Mike, thank you so much. Thank you for making yourself available so quickly. Thank you for helping us celebrate our 100th episode. Hopefully there will be another 100 and we'll have you back again to celebrate that.
There you go. Sounds great. Well, congratulations and keep up the great work on sharing the experiences of blind people in the organized blind movement.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, people can connect with me, of course, on social media, on Mastodon at president@nfb.social. You can find me on Facebook if you search for my name. And you can also interact with the AI version of Mark Riccobono that we're building. If you go to riccobono.personal.ai, I can't guarantee that all the answers you get will be accurate, but what we're doing is building the first ever personal artificial intelligence system that's completely built on the experience of blind people. So one of the things you can do with my personal AI is share what some of your experiences are, and I'll add those as memories or tips that you have for other blind people. And eventually, down the road, we'll have an AI system that's completely driven by the experience of blind people. It'll be much smarter than ChatGPT when it comes to blindness. So check out riccobono.personal.ai. Ask it some interesting questions, and we'll see how we can use that technology down the road.
Thanks again to President Riccobono for coming on and talking about the NFB in general, as well as his personal stories as he rose through the ranks as affiliate president and then as a staffer there down in Baltimore, and to his presidency now for almost 10 years. Lisa, it was a great time talking to the president.
It really was. And I felt like we could have gone on and on. One, because there's so much to talk about NFB in general. And his story also was very compelling. I really enjoyed listening to him as getting involved at such a young age. I mean, he had such a big job at, I think, either 23, 24 years old as director of the center. But again, even setting up the time to have him on, at no point did I feel like I was, going to see the wizard and, fear and trembling, very accessible guy, very easy. As you heard, it was very easy to talk to. We had a wonderful conversation. So grateful for him being on.
Yeah, it really was. And hopefully everyone is going to Orlando in July, and we'll stop by, not at the same time, stop by the presidential suite to say hello and maybe grab a picture with him. One of the things that President Riccobono mentioned was the Jernigan Scholarship. If you want to go, if you've never been to a national convention, you've got to go. It will, like he said, it will change your life. And it will get you moving. Think back to that episode when Christine Palmer first went to the state convention and amplify that.
Yeah.
And so if you've never been to a national convention, the scholarship is called the Jernigan Fund, and you can get to that by going through our website, nfbofpa.org/Jernigan, Jernigan. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's really just a quick pass through of our website, taking you over to nfb.org and the page there. It'll give you all the information that you need and the paperwork that you need to fill out to get the scholarship, to get some money to help you out so you can go to Orlando this coming July.
Yeah, and I want to thank those of you who sent in questions. Preston, thank you so much. If you have any comments, we'd love to hear any feedback at all. You can email us at whitecanesconnect@gmail.com.
Or reach out via phone and let us hear what you thought of the interview, or any questions, comments, show ideas you may have. 267-338-4495. You've got up to 3 minutes to leave your name and town and your question, comment, show idea, whatever you've got. We'd love to hear from you. Again, 267-338-4495. Now, Lisa, we have a very special ending to this episode.
We do. So thank you for getting us to episode 100, and keep listening.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.
Nobody can stop you. Shoot for the sun and break on through. So you're blind, you'll be fine. We got good news. You can live the life you want. Yes, we know the truth. Grab a cane, get trained. Gotta get moving. Make a change on a wage. That's what we're doing. Come with me, yeah, and live the life you want. Nobody can stop you. Shoot for the sun and break on through. So you're blind, you'll be fine. We got good news. You can live the life you want. Yes, we know the truth. You and me and a bee. Let's dream together. And it be you and me lives on forever. You will see, yeah. You can live the life you want. Nobody can stop you. Shoot for the sun and break on through. So you're blind, you'll be fine. We got good news. You can live the life you want. Yes, we know the truth. You can live the life you want. Yes, we know the truth.